I have mainly talked about the value of SASE project in the first part, and then I have gone through things that you should choose the right SASE to make your SASE project successful. This is part 3, and in this video, I will briefly go over what I talked about in the previous videos, and then I'll talk about how you can proceed with your SASE project based on Gartner's strategic roadmap to SASE. For enterprises, SASE project is super duper important. Let's take a quick look at the Infrastructure and Operations Cloud Strategies conference presented by Gartner, which deals with SASE that was going on for 3 days from December 6th to 8th in 2022. If you look here, Gartner said that SASE is the most important of the 6 trends that will impact infrastructure and operations, and also forecasted about companies spending on it will grow 38% more in 2023 than last year. The main reason why SASE gives innovative impact on enterprises is that SASE was born today to protect resources on every edge regardless of the locations and to make a constant transition to the hybrid working environment and to the cloud computing environment as well. And Gartner recommends single vendor SASE to achieve a successful SASE project. Gartner said that most vendors in the SASE market are still in the phase of incomplete technology framework phase. So there are only actually 9 well-made single vendor SASE in the market today. As it was explained in the previous videos, what Gartner says about the SASE vendors is that we can minimize the target range to only 9 vendors, instead of wasting time for reviewing this and that to make the SASE project successful. As Gartner mentioned in the presentation, single vendor SASE should have an architecture that fully converges network and SASE capabilities. Single vendor SASE requires single pass scanning, single unified console, and a single data lake, which are the components that enhance the user experience and the work efficiency. Well, that was about what I've been continuously emphasizing in the previous videos as well. You should probably take a look at that as well. SASE project is not a mere trending stuff that just associates with transitioning from expensive MPLS to SD-WAN. It is more like a direction where we should go. Let me go through another presentation from Gartner's INO Cloud Strategy Conference. NAS and multi-cloud networking software with ZTNA and NetDevOps say that they will lead the innovation in the networking environment. It is also saying that companies must take some risks and then take the lead in applying these new concepts and ideas, because in this way, they can surely innovate their networking environments. However, Gartner made quite an ambiguous statement in these presentations. Gartner said that there are some leading vendors in this field of multi-cloud networking softwares, but there is actually no vendor that provides the full capabilities, and this really applies to the case of NAS. Many vendors call themselves NAS, for sure, but at least half of them do not even meet the criteria for being an actual NAS. Those vendors who say something like the following are not considered as the real NAS vendors, and that is we are flexible enough to be deployed as both hardware and cloud, which provides a complicated manual or the one that includes purchasing hardware devices. Also, we got something significant here. NAS is not a technology, but a style and a mechanism. Also, NAS can be used as a firewall and a substitute to a router. In our previous video, I basically talked about that since CATO SASE network services are built truly on ZTNA and software-defined network, the path is automatically generated, and if there is no path available, connection simply fails. And security such as the WAN firewall is able to be applied to the WAN segment for that precise east-west traffic security. Alright, let's move on. If you put Gartner's 2 presentations all together and apply them into a SASE selection criteria, and the success goals of the SASE project, you can definitely establish a succinct criteria. In short, companies today should protect all their resources on all edges regardless of the location, support the continuous transition to hybrid workforce and cloud computing. And the most important thing to remember is that the only SASE that can achieve such goals is a single vendor SASE. So at the end, it can perform an efficient management and provide good user experiences. And this single vendor SASE must be designed based on ZTNA and NetDevOps, and should be able to provide tools, MCNS, and NAS capabilities. And for the MCNS and NAS provided, it should be able to provide a network service with its own global backbone, which prevents it from having a complex contract that requires purchasing separate equipment and renting extra lines. Then it is possible to successfully migrate the legacy network and the network security infrastructure sequentially to an easy, scalable, and agile SASE by selecting and applying the right SASE to fulfill all of these requirements. And at the end, your SASE project will surely be really successful with no doubt. So moving on, in conclusion, SASE is a cloud service that has been developed and deployed all around the world, which means it has been providing a reliable service. Because a completed SASE was built and prepared to achieve those SASE goals, the success of SASE project entirely depends on the selection of the right SASE, and especially the migration strategy for you to go through. That is the most important one. So now, I will give you the strategic roadmap for the success of the SASE project. And again, I will quote Gartner's presentation to make my explanation a bit more trustable for all of you. Well, unfortunately, as there are many perspectives within Gartner itself regarding SASE, I will try my best not to hesitate to give you a better path to go on. And to give you the insight to create a more realistic roadmap to SASE, I will focus on the capabilities provided by the most reputable SASE, which is CATO SASE, obviously, Well, Gartner divides this roadmap into a short-term, mid-term, and long-term. First of all, let's get to the short-term. A SASE project team or a consultative body should be formed with the network and security departments. Also, SASE is for the workforce transformation and branch office transformation, so it changes the connection environments for both branch offices and the users as well. Therefore, if the project is exclusively led by a specific department, it is likely to fail, because it can end up being a simple MPLS or VPN improvement project. Or it could end up as a cloud SWG improvement project. Furthermore, if there is a separate department in charge of cloud, this department is the one that must join the project team to optimize the cloud with SASE. This SASE project team should be collecting all the requirements from all departments, coordinate and organize the collected requirements, and then eventually select the optimal SASE. There is something you must be aware of when creating criteria. The criteria should be including what to improve regarding the main purpose of your SASE project. And you should make sure that it has an actual architecture and infrastructure to make that happen in real life for your SASE project. From the perspective of each department, if you put the criteria as the smallest detail within the capabilities of SASE, that can actually cause constant confusion and turn the project into the adoption of point solutions. And then SASE has the capabilities of point solutions operated by the separate departments, but it can still make an effective collaborative platform, which leads to the creation of a better IT infrastructure. So you should not make a criteria like, does it support the duplication removal in our WAN optimization equipment? Or does it implement a security-related signature like a point product that we used to have? You should never make these kind of criteria ever. Moving on, you should determine the overall scope and phases to start migrating to SASE, and then you can start actually applying the pilot to your SASE. The very first step that must be done in prior to everything else is basically trying to see if your IT environment fits to the selected SASE vendor's service. In my experience, I recommend you to do migrating to a number of locations or multiple VPN users per region, and the data centers that connect to all of them. This allows you to identify applications and shadow IT used within the enterprise, and you can reconfigure policies for the access permissions as well. What's important about this process is that it is really paramount to enhance your security. In most of the larger companies I've experienced, they are managed in a way that the person in charge allows the access. This management method is incapable of managing history, so the amount of allowed rules continuously increases, and it can even be augmented. In the end, the allowed range continues to increment again and again, forever and ever. Even if this security equipment or the person in charge changes, it is nearly impossible to know what rules are unnecessary, so it ends up using the same existing rules. And coupled with the visibility into traffic in all directions based on deep packet inspection of 7 layers, SASE provides SD-WAN and CASB that can analyze and classify applications, which allow you to view all the applications and access status in the enterprise. Based on what I just said, you can easily, precisely establish, implement, and maintain security policies through the naming method, through user awareness and application awareness. Once the security enhancement is completed through tuning the policy, you can expand it right away by simply connecting the branches or users to your SASE project. Of course, you can use the existing firewall rules if you want to, but I think it is kind of meaningful to check whether the existing policy is polished. I recommend you to achieve this security enhancement through SASE based on ZTNA because I really think it is quite a meaningful task for security itself. And then let's move on to the last and the most important assessment of short term here. In the initial pilot application, there are many works to do, and it goes quite busy because a collision with the existing policies must be prevented, and there are many policy recalibrations getting to enhance the security policies. And whether the quick setup is possible in this step is considered in the evaluation as well. Now, this is where the most important evaluation happens. When you get into the operational mode, after tuning and recalibrating all of this stuff, you should evaluate if the applied SASE actually provides a meaningful value to you. You should not only see if it can eliminate complexity and capable of simple and easy security policy management, but also evaluate if it performs the policy executions with no deficiencies as a zero-trust architecture. And there's another important element you should evaluate. You must evaluate that the user experience and the network performances on whether they are given a consistent connectivity to a physical data center, cloud data center, and the SaaS applications. I heard that those people who coined this term SASE in Gartner are security people. You should always keep in mind that Gartner's SASE tends to be more focused on security side, which basically means that their definition is a little bit tilted and actually inclined to be like that. For hybrid work and cloud transformation, providing reliable connectivity across the expanded WAN segment proves that SASE is a completely different service from SSE. Again, SSE cannot be a SASE that provides professional network services even if it is at a data center with the good internet. At least it is totally impossible for them to provide the flexibility and agility that is equivalent to the service that the actual SASE provide. I would like to say that the combination of two vendors in this document leads to a clear failure of SASE project. Having two vendors will never deliver you the single path scan, single data lake, and single management plane that SASE must provide. It just pretends to be SASE, but it never is. And as you're probably experiencing, the architecture of a company's IT trend has a huge impact on today's business. So the companies tend to maintain the same architecture, same structure for 5 to 10 years, making little or no change. It is also a sad reality that there are many IT managers saying, "Oh, I don't want any change while I'm here for my stable work life." Well, in this case, this is not IT people being lazy or greedy or any negative thing like that. So cloud transitions that require support are constantly occurring, and the number of remote workers repeatedly fluctuate. And then the IT infrastructure built to support those issues already have too many point solutions to handle, which make those IT people to get so much stress every single day. The purpose of SASE project is to solve such issues, and you should always avoid being a testbed that tests the combination of two vendors without even knowing when it's going to be completed. And I have never seen two vendors forming a strong bond in a single solution for about 30 years since I joined this field of IT. I have seen some cases where a solution was absorbed to another through M&A, or it was eliminated strategically. When two solutions were put together, they were not firmly converged. And if it is possible for multiple vendors to gather around and become a SASE, that means you don't really have to do your own SASE project, because you have already been operating these vendors' point solutions that are integrated through NMS or ESM. In my opinion, managed SASE shouldn't be targeted for SASE project either. Well, you may see managed SASE vendor made up of multiple point solutions to be something that is easily done, and they've been doing it pretty well. But those people who manage in those managed SASE vendors are still living with huge amount of stress every day. I don't think they can afford the support you ask for smoothly. In my experience, help desks only takes whatever that's requested, and all those people in charge of numerous point solutions that consist of managed SASE are not in one place. That means for the most of the cases, they probably won't have the insight to solve your problems. In the end, you need to find it within the single vendor SASE for the very success of your SASE project. Of course, there are multiple vendors among Gartner's single vendor SASE that have acquired SASE vendors and offer them to a single company. In fact, they are still considered as portfolio single vendor SASE. Even if they get to the operational mode, they still have complex conflicts between the two vendors. If you would like to avoid all the risks of your SASE project, you may want to take a look at the presentation about unified SASE from the Dell Aura group. Well, the explanation got too long, so I'll move to the next section real quick. In reality, vendors have already established infrastructure for SASE, so the customers can just make the contract and use it right away. In conclusion, most of goals are achieved in the short-term stage. Therefore, the midterm is a stage where you will expand and implement what you got from the short term. Gartner announced that this process would take about 2 to 3 years. But in my experiences of deploying CATO SASE, it only takes about 2 to 3 months. Well, I do think that you need to have more than just 6 months to achieve the short-term goals. Because if the short-term goals are well achieved, then the midterm goals can easily be achieved as well. The zero trust architecture of an enterprise is not about what solutions are currently lacking and what they need to be reinforced. You have to see if it is converged as perfect as CATO SASE, so that it configures a zero trust architecture that is easily and efficiently managed and performs really well. And again, these are really important. No matter how powerful a solution may be, zero trust cannot be implemented within the enterprise if they impose policies too much, or if the policy setting is too complicated and difficult. Therefore, the pilot phase, which enables SASE to gain visibility, view, and apply visibility into your IT infrastructure in your short-term goals, is really critical, and it could also be time-consuming. Let's move on to the long-term goals. With the exception of the need for an integrated department to operate SASE at the top of the list, there's really nothing else to go through. The second one is something that can be solved easily if you implement the single vendor SASE. Why should a customer wait for a proper integration between the SD-WAN vendor and SASE vendor? This is not customer's responsibility, right? And the third should be started within the short-term goals, and machine learning is already implemented in a single vendor SASE in many forms. Actually, there are vendors like CATO Networks that are moving beyond just machine learning. They are moving to big data analysis. With full traffic visibility, the goal is achieved right away after deployment because rule policies and logs from single data lake are able to be analyzed really easily. And I think discarding the dedicated line is just an option for all the customers because there might be a data backup or mirroring between companies' data centers, and there could be some tasks with different level of security than typical tasks that require dedicated lines. In short, a company that have transitioned the network to SASE might need its own dedicated line. In conclusion, SASE network service can replace the dedicated lines with various objectives. However, the customer may desire to continue using its own dedicated line for some things like the backup of their database. So I think the phrase should be phrased like SASE can integrate and manage dedicated lines as well. So now I'll wrap this up. For the very success of your SASE project, it is paramount that you choose the right SASE from the single vendor SASE. And because the right single vendor SASE are already built with full architectures, the success of SASE project is determined in the very beginning and should be scaled in accordance with the timeline you have established previously. Applying expansions and stuff is done consistently, so you don't have to allocate big amount of time in your schedule to do this well. You probably have done some projects associated with routers, SD-WAN, firewalls, proxy, and other possible solutions. Even if you try to do one of these, you really have to acquire in-depth knowledge of these point solutions. You should understand what is capability of this and that hardware, how's the performance when the rules are applied for each device, and how to perform redundancy to address issues, and etc. It's because things really depend on the vendors, and their devices all have different sizes as well. Then you should probably develop a complicated deployment plan. It is really complicated because there's always lack of technicians for such point solutions, so it's hard to deploy multiple regions simultaneously, and you must also deploy them sequentially. Alright, and the technicians in the project team are doing their works, so there's a lot of troubles for people to adjust their own schedules to this project. When you proceed to do actual deployment, you will face many variables. There are many cases that can actually delay the deployment. For example, you made a business trip for installation, but the equipment was delayed in the customs clearance, or it has some problems in the hardware, or the site was in an unexpected situation, or the technician who came for help was not quite knowledgeable. Let me tell you another case where the project was delayed. So I finally got to make a business trip for the installation, right? But the customer already purchased the device locally last year because they were in an urgent situation, as they said. Well, it ended up installing a proxy on top of another proxy, which was not very enjoyable. Today, however, beyond the framework phase, there are actually some well-made SASE in the market. These well-made SASE can actually solve those difficulties that I've been mentioning. Because there are so many vendors in the market calling themselves the SASE vendors, it is really hard to find the right SASE. However, as long as you select the right SASE, all of your edges shall be connected in a consistent and easy manner, and you'll be able to receive that SASE service. If you succeed your SASE project with this, SASE will give you a full visibility to all of your traffic, and you can manage your IT infrastructure easily and accurately through this given visibility. The ability to identify and manage all the edges within the SASE is an innovation to the operation and management to the IT infrastructure of the enterprise. And such innovation is basically a convenience and safety that is identical to the one you get when managing a few point solutions together in the past. The reason why I keep making these videos that introduce SASE is because I really want the IT people to live comfortable lives, as the IT field today is lacking human resources in general. The confidence that we've gained recently working with CATO SASE comes from the experience of myself and my engineers living a stress-free life, and the operations and support we provide have become so much easier than before. Thank you.